Hello everyone and welcome along to the Event Industry News Podcast. My name's James Dixon, wishing you all a very good morning, afternoon or evening, whenever or wherever you are tuning in to today's podcast from. And on today's podcast, we're going to be talking to Mandy Mahil. Mandy is the founder of Mango Pie, an event management company based in London that was founded back in 2007, I believe, Mandy. And welcome along to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Yes, so I suppose there's a first point of clarification. Is 2007 correct? It's about 12, 13 years in the business now?
Yeah, coming up to 12 full years, really. It was a great time that we started just before the recession. Yeah. So we've had our roller coaster ride of 12 years, but it's been exciting.
On that subject, just to begin with, I've spoken to a lot of companies on the podcast over the last few years that have started around that same sort of time, 2006, 2007. And instinctively, the first thing to think is, wow, the financial crash was 2008. But I'm always surprised at how many of those companies actually look back and say that actually made them stronger and put them in a better position today because of how hard they had to work for the business in those early years. Were you guys in a similar position where because of that you found yourselves working even harder than you may have had to do so?
Yeah, well, just to clarify, when you say you guys, there was no you guys, it was me for a very long time. And the interesting thing was what we did find that happened when the recession happened was a lot of people became redundant and started up their all startup businesses anyway. Yeah. So therefore, I'd been doing it for a couple of years by then, at which point I had learned how to do that, how to, make it format your company, how to then set it up, website, domains, hostings, be your own IT person, your own accountant, doing VAT registrations and quarterly, all that I had to learn very quickly and had done so. And in 2 years, I had a good foundation set of the runnings of the business. And what I say is, rather than working in my business, I was able to then by that time work on my business, which was that I was able to go out and get some business and find clients and make it work. By which time, I was established for 2 years, and as I said, I was lucky I had previous clients that had moved along with me in my previous 10 years of working in the events industry. So when I did start up Mango Pie, they wanted to continue working with me. And the lovely quote that I used to hear a lot was, well, we never worked with you because of the company that you're in. We worked with you because of you. And I think that's a really good sort of basis of what we're trying to talk about even today, of how I think that's what gives longevity, is when in business, is having that loyalty and taking that time to build that relationship with people.
And when it comes to taking the time to build the relationship, something that I noticed on your website was that you openly said that there are no brochures, there are no packages and things that, if somebody gets in touch with you, it's not just a case of, right, here's some packages that we offer. Everything is designed on a bespoke level from the ground up on a case-by-case basis for every client that you work with. And I suppose that attitude towards delivering events ties in with having this loyalty from customers and people dealing with people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I understand how companies will have to have packages and systemize their way that, in such a fashion, because of the sheer volume of inquiries that they get. My intention was never to create a big factory wheel of creating events. That was the reason why I set up Mango Pie in the first place. I was running about 3 events a week. It literally got to a point that I would throw a folder down on my desk in the morning after doing an event the night before and picking up the event folder that I was going to be running with for tonight. It was very mechanical. It was very factory wheel. It was, inserting numbers into boxes kind of a system, and I didn't believe that's what events should really be about. And it's a hell of a lot of money throwing an event, a hell of a lot of money, and I used to think I couldn't see the value that the client was getting from it, doing it in such a fashion. And that's why I kept it very small. Even now, 12 years on, we only do about an average of 20 events a year.
Yeah.
And there is, and if a wedding at all, it'll be one wedding, no more than that, because it's just so time consuming. Sure. And the whole point is that we want to give that value of our time to our clients.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we wanted to get you on the podcast today to sort of talk about and discuss is this idea that there is this formulaic way, I suppose, in certain areas of the events industry, like you've experienced, where you pick up the folder, you tick the boxes, you put the numbers into the box. It's events by numbers. But that this sort of model, in a way, does need to rethink itself. It needs to change, and something needs to change to deliver better value, not just to the clients that you're working to, presumably, but for the attendees, the people who are coming to these events.
Yeah, exactly. It's an interesting way that things have evolved in events, and just in general in life. I just think everybody has become a lot more time poor. And the problem is that although we have been given so many more tools these days, more than ever before, to be able to communicate to more people, it's almost as if we've forgotten how to actually talk to an individual. And I think our focus has gone into the bigger numbers, isn't it? It's like, how many followers can we get? How many likes can we get? How many people can we reach? And the further our voice can get to, the more our message will be heard. Well, I kind of sometimes think that, yes, your message will be heard, but will it really resonate to the person listening? You know, and we have found that with the clients that we have, that there are sort of annual clients. They do their annual events, and they work with us every single year. And what we've done with some of the events is actually we've made them so much smaller, and they have, and our clients have found that they have worked far better than doing the larger events. And the events that we do are things like receptions and dinners in museums and galleries is the main style of events that we do. And I guess it would fall for the events which are like award ceremonies as well. I mean, the award ceremonies, I see images of them online on Instagram of 300, 400, 500 people attending. But I do question, how much value did that person take? Apart from the person who won the award, everyone else, did they really get much value from it? But our dinners, as I say, they've got smaller and more frequent. So rather than doing this one dinner that we used to do every single year for 150 people, we now do 2 for 60. Sure. And even in that 60, what our client does is it's 50% internal and 50% guests. So when we do a table plan, it is very much based on client host, client host, client host, client host.
Yeah.
And that makes so much more sense, because then they get so much more personal attention, they get spoken to. And if you think about it, if you were doing a dinner party at home, that was you and your wife or your girlfriend or partner, and you decided to invite 20 people, and you had one evening with all of them, could you genuinely say that you had a good conversation with all the people that came to your dinner party?
Yeah, absolutely not. You couldn't. And it's the same. It's the same. I remember when I got married, you have your guests there, and you might be lucky to speak to each one of them for a couple of minutes, but it's physically impossible to spend any, meaningful time with every single person there. And that translates directly to events, particularly business event, where you're inviting clients, and the whole purpose of that event is to get them interested in your business, to secure them as a long-term client if they've done business with you before. You want to spend meaningful time, don't you? And what's occurred to me, it almost feels like the Jerry Maguire approach, the fewer clients, but more time with them, approach to delivering these type of events.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other point that you mentioned earlier is that there are a lot more companies out there, and there's a lot more companies that are being created that do the same things. So there's a lot more events companies now than there were 12 years ago, and similarly throughout across the board. So my thought is actually, I would love to see it if more people focused on doing and encouraging clients and making them understand that if they did a smaller event and more of them, then they'd get a lot more value out of that. And also it's a lot of money. So for a dinner party, even if it was in a gallery, say you had 50 people there, per plate, that does work out sometimes around about £250, £300 per person attending. And you've spent that. But and they've come and they might have had a lovely meal and everything like that, but they didn't get what you wanted them to get. They didn't get you. They didn't get to speak to you. They didn't get your time. And that's what you wanted, and that's what they wanted. So make it possible so that both of you get out of it what you wanted to.
Sure.
And so, make it realistic. Make your numbers realistic that you can actually talk to. And it is about getting to know that individual a bit more. Get personal. They're not a number, they're not a name, they're not a business title, they're not a name badge. They're a lot more than just that.
When it comes to the structure of the events that you deliver, have you rethought, maybe not dramatically, but looked at ways to reinvigorate what again was quite a formulaic way of delivering certain types of corporate event, arrival, glass of fizz, a drinks reception, sit down, a 3-course meal, a presentation, some entertainment, that there was quite a sort of tick box approach to the way and the structure of some of those evenings. Have you rethought that at all?
Yeah. So I do think of some crazy ideas sometimes, and it's still a bit of a battle trying to convince a client to do something different than the norm. But, we do push that boundary a lot. So, one of the ideas I had was, when you invite a guest and when they've said that they're coming, why don't we, one of my crazy ideas was, why don't we ask them what their favorite drink is and where that favorite drink, where they get that favorite drink from,
Sure.
What's their favorite bar and their favorite drink. And then my thought was that instead of having a drinks reception, why don't we have it so that the guests actually get taken straight to their table for dinner, and actually you get to start a conversation at your table or around your table pre-dinner. And my thought was, it would be amazing if we could recreate their favorite drink as their first drink on arrival, which is probably insane to try and create. But you know what? If you kept it small, it's not to say that it wouldn't be possible.
Well, again, this level of I suppose detail and creating something that's very personalised to guests can only be achieved when you're dealing with smaller numbers. If you've got 200 people arriving for a drinks reception, with the best will in the world, you're not going to be able to deliver a personalised cocktail that each person requests. But if your numbers are smaller, you can suddenly start exploring ways to personalise your event.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is as well is that, if you just did something slightly different, something a bit more personal, they will remember that forever. Forever. I mean, I would remember if I went to somewhere and somebody said, "Oh, Mandy, here's an old fashioned for you." I'd be like, "I love you." I remember, thank goodness I'm not getting a glass of champagne or a glass of wine that I don't particularly want, but I'd love to have an old fashioned. I would just remember that forever. But we do other things as well, is to make things personal. So we've done, I personally did this actually at the end of the day, and didn't regret it, but I was sort of like, oh, never doing that again. I hand embroidered everyone's names on their napkins for 60 guests for a sit down dinner, and everyone loved it, and they all took their napkins home, which was great. But then the guests that didn't come, I was so upset because I had a handful of napkins that I had embroidered, and they didn't turn up. Normally it's just a seating card which you can sort of throw away in the bin. You go, oh, they didn't come. But this was kind of like, no, I'm taking the napkins home, and forever we'll remember all those people that didn't turn up. So I know all their names off by heart now because I see the names every day. But that was lovely. Another thing that we did this year was we had some personalized and especially commissioned by an artist, table mats made, which were which were taken from the exhibition, which was the exhibition that they were viewing during reception before they went up for dinner, and everyone took their table mats home. It was amazing, and I even got phone calls and emails from guests that attended, wanting to buy the whole series, and I had to explain to them that they weren't for sale. They were commissioned especially just for that dinner. But I had to have some more made up just because the guests wanted the full set.
And again, what's great about that, when you talk to people who market events and who want to improve into attendee engagement, if you've got ways of reactivating the feeling that they had whilst they were at that event at other points beyond that event, you've marketed your event brilliantly, and you've got your customers hooked then. And every time the people those guests were to take out the napkins or to look at the placemat, they would be reminded instantly, wouldn't they, of that particular event,
of course.
which has got them then as a customer and as a client.
Yeah, we always try and think of something from the event that the guests could take away home, and would be personal to them, something that they would keep, and then they would then remember for the event. And that's what makes it memorable, and it will make it stand out. And there's just so many drinks and receptions, and you just find it's the same people that tend to go to the receptions and the dinners, especially in the sector that I work in, being the museums and galleries. Because it's usually sponsors of exhibitions and galleries, being like law firms and banks and insurance kind of companies and so forth. But because they attend so many of these events all the time, you need to make sure that yours is going to be the one that stands out from all the others.
In the time that you've worked and Mango Pie has been in existence, working in the types of venues that you've described, have you seen an improvement in the way that the venues themselves host events and work with companies like your own? That there seems to be a lot more competition for private event spaces and bespoke event spaces in London, particularly. Have you seen an improvement in how they actually operate and work with you?
Yes, it's taken a long time, and it's still a lot of work ahead, because the larger institutions are still not sure, I think, about events management companies or agencies, as they would call us. I don't particularly like that title, but so therefore, when they have their approved suppliers list, there is still no allocation for event management companies on there at all. It was only because after working for 6 years at the National Portrait Gallery that I convinced them to create a new category in their approved suppliers list to be called event management companies. And it was all because I can understand that their point. Their thoughts were that, well, we have our list of caterers, we have our list of florists, and we have our list of lighting and florists and everything. So why would a client need you?
I can hear people screaming the answer down at the podcast who are listening in, but go on.
Yeah, and it's really frustrating because, believe me, even now I still get ask the same question.
Sure.
And then it does take a long time for me to explain that, well, you know what, if the client, and a client may be educated enough to know all the suppliers that are on that suppliers list, but they won't really have the time to think about, what is this event about?
Mm-hmm.
What am I trying to get out of it? What's the best way of creating this event and designing this event? And because they don't have time to do that, because they are probably in their stage like me when I was doing 3 events a week and they need to be organizing and getting on with it and get on with the next one, which I completely understand. But again, it goes back to the point that, you know, people are time poor. So, you know, it's almost like I would love to be able to give them a helping hand to make the most out of their event, to get value, add value back into their event, and be the one that go, right, I see your budget. I know what you're trying to achieve. And my feeling is this is the best way of designing it and creating it. And of course, there's always those bespoke element pieces are always the most time consuming ones. You know,
Absolutely,
it'll probably take you the same amount of time to organize a whole event as it would just to do that one bespoke element. And nobody has that time. We do, obviously, because we only do 20 events a year. So, you know, and or even researching on how to create that, you know, because it's not going to be possible from those regular suppliers. It's going to be off that suppliers list to create that extra something. But then, you know, and then also liaising with everyone to make sure everybody understands what we're trying to achieve and the goal and the focus and what value the client is trying to get out of the event.
Sure.
It's so many different elements, and the whole point is also for the venue is that we're always still going to be pushing boundaries, and although we know all their rules and regulations, we're always going to think, how can we do this differently? Because we won't have that cookie cutter sort of formation and system that bar goes here and tables go there and, you know, kitchens set up there. We will try and figure out and do something different. But now Portrait Gallery love it because we're always going to show off their venue and show different ways it can be done and different things can be done. So, you know, we did our 10th anniversary dinner celebration at the National Portrait Gallery, and we did it in the main hall. And believe it or not, no one's ever done a dinner in the main hall. So I was just like, well, let's do it. Let's take photographs, and so that we can then showcase to everyone, you can do a dinner in a main hall, and this is what it would look like. So, you know, it's strange. It's a simple thing, but sometimes it requires a little bit more time to think about it, to create a different solution.
Absolutely, and insanity doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. You know, you know, you have to come in and with different thinking and a new viewpoint on things in order to continually freshen things up and expect, you know, new business to come to you. One thing that I'm curious about, and you mentioned there when it comes to approved suppliers lists, in the venues that you work in, if they do operate off of approved suppliers lists, if you have a really specific idea of what you want to create and how you want to do that, and are there ever instances where some of the suppliers who are on a venue's approved supply list physically don't have the capability to deliver what you want to do? And in that scenario, do you have the ability to maybe bring in suppliers that you do know can deliver your vision?
Yeah, so because we are approved suppliers, we still have to abide by the same rules and regulations as all the others on the list. And one of them is that we have to have a £10 million insurance and liability insurance. So therefore, there have been certain cases when nobody else could do or achieve or bring in what we wanted them to do, and so we've been able to bring them basically under our insurance. So therefore we can still make it happen. So it does work in that basis as well, because then we can we can bring in other elements. But obviously this is all after getting after getting approval from the venue and them being all okay with it. But on that does help to bring in something else different and variety that wouldn't have been possible if you just stuck strictly to going to those suppliers.
Absolutely. We've been talking on today's podcast with our guest Mandy Mahil, and I should have asked at the beginning, am I pronouncing that correctly? I hope I got the Mandy bit right. Is it Mahil?
Well, Mahil, but
Mahil,
Mahil, but there's no R, there's no double L, so I can understand where the confusion comes from, so it's fine.
Not a problem at all. Mandy's from Mango Pie, an event management company based in London, founded in 2007. Just talking today on the podcast about the way that Mandy and her team deliver the events for their clients, and maybe about rethinking the formulaic way that certain corporate events have been delivered over the years, and how maybe by reducing the numbers can allow them to focus a little bit more on those really, really important client relationships that ultimately the events are geared around delivering and improving. Mandy, if any of our podcast followers want to get in touch with you guys at Mango Pie to find out a little bit more about what you can do, how can they do that?
Of course. Well, we have the website, which is mango-pie.com, with all the other links that goes to our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Pinterest. Our Instagram is Mango Pie Events. Our Twitter is mango_pie. Or just email us on hello@mango-pie.com.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for joining the podcast today, Mandy. It's been great to talk to you, and to all our podcast followers, we will see you on the next edition of the Event Industry News podcast. Thanks very much for listening, and very goodbye.
Thank you very much.